property on Woodside.
That was 2227 Woodside, right?
Right.
Well, you should don't you remember some of that house?
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, then I went. Anyway, I was $18,000 in debt the day we opened up for business. And having used our equity in the little house for down payment. We paid $12,000 for the property and then another $6,000 for equipment in the store. No, more than that. Oh yeah, well, then we had some fixing to do in the house and store both and everything. Anyway, we were $18,000 in debt. But we were doing pretty well, but then came the Korean War. And this was in the early 1950s. I think it was about 51. Remembering that back in World War II, sugar had been rationed, and it was awfully difficult to get the ingredients for sugars, for cookies, for syrups, and candies, which was the principal part of my business. So I applied the Dow Chemical magnesium foundry for a job, still keeping the store. That meant I had to hire help during my shift at work, but the other part of the time I was able to work in the store myself.
Now,
we were open until 10 o'clock at night.
Just so we don't forget, there were 2 kids born during this interim between the end of the war in 1951 when you bought the dairy on Columbus and on Woodside and Atlantic.
Anne was born a year after Dad got home from the service. And then we were still living on Van Buren Street then. And then in November of 47, that's when we sold the house and moved out on Woodside. And we sold it, well, in November. We moved in November, didn't we? October, November,
I think it was something like that.
to Woodside. And you were born then that January. So you were born on
So you were 7 months along when you moved.
8 months.
8 months.
See, that was another factor in moving, because the little house only had 3 very, very small bedrooms.
Yeah. No closet space.
And we already had 2 children, and with the 3rd one coming, we knew we had to do something. And then the opportunity came for this other house, which gave us more room.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well then.
So you were born on Woodside, and then 4 years later, Joey was born on Woodside.
Joey was born just shortly after you moved, or you bought the dairy. Then.
Right. And then I lost a baby in between, and then we decided to. Oh, then the property on Fitzhugh Street was up for sale, and we had it was kind of bad for Ann to take 2 buses and go to St. James, and your dad had always wanted your kids to go to St. James. So when this came up, I said to your dad, okay, we buy this house and sell the one in Woodside, or your kids are going to go to St. John's. I'm not going to put up with her 2 buses every day, because she was so little.
Well, and Jimmy was going to school.
Yeah, he was in St. James too.
Then you were getting close to having to go to school also.
Yeah, well, you finally went to Woodside School to kindergarten.
Right.
Then in 54, we moved from Woodside to Fitzhugh Street. then Mike was born the following May in 55.
Okay. In all this time now, you're working for Dow Chemical.
Yeah, because we sold the store before we moved away from Woodside.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, right, okay. I remember that too.
there just was no life for a young family. Because I'd be working a regular shift and then working another shift in the store, which meant that Mama was home with the kids most of the time. Even though
And by this time it was, well, at least 3 and...
4. It was 4.
yeah,
When did you actually sell the store? That's right, Joey was born in 51.
1. Yeah.
And you sold the store
In 54.
in 54.
sold the
Sold
House.
the house in 54.
we sold the store before we same 53. No, anyway, we
Somewhere
sold the
in-
house. We
But it
sold
was
the
after
store
Joey
first.
was born, yeah.
Yeah.
So you had 4 kids at home,
Right.
and Dad's working full-time and running a business full-time. Plus, you've got 2 apartments upstairs to take care of.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're a little busy.
Right.
Okay.
So we had to sell determined that we had to sell the store. Made it a little easier around the house. Of course, there was less income. Fortunately, though, we had the 2 apartments rented upstairs. Incidentally, Rita and
Rennie.
my sister, Rita, and her husband, Rennie Bove, lived in one of the apartments. But when they started having their children, well, then they had to find a bigger place too. But we never had any trouble renting the 2 upstairs apartments. But the downstairs one, being a large apartment, and it was more difficult to rent, especially in the winter, because people with families very, very seldom move in the winter. They move in spring, summer, and fall. So anyway, that large apartment was empty for several months, which created a burden for us too. And so we decided, well, rather than keep putting money into it, or at least not making anything on it, unless all 3 apartments were rented, we decided to sell it, which we did.
That Greenleaf, you know, he moved in at first. You know, he rented, didn't he, for a couple of months, and then he decided to buy.
No. But anyway, he bought it.
Yeah.
And he's still there today, I think.
Yeah.
He's held that property. Okay, so we're up to 1955. Mike arrives. You're living on Fitcher Street. We're all going to St. James. And things are pretty good?
Yeah. Well, not too bad. We had that one session with Wellman when they were on strike for 7 weeks. It didn't help. But I mean, we didn't really suffer. I mean, we didn't get behind too much on bills or anything. And of course, the payments on the house were low, you know. So.
Well, of course, we sold our pension, Dow pension rights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dow sold the plant to Wellman, and at that time we had an option. They gave us an option. We could, the employees that is, could remain where we were working for Wellman and retain our pension rights for the number of years we had worked for Dow. And or as openings came up in the Dow system, we could continue working for them in Midland or wherever the other openings were. And also we could sell or cash in is a better word, our pension rights. Well, I hung on to mine for about a year or so. Then times were getting a little tough, and we cashed that in, along with some insurance policies.
Yeah,
We had
right.
2 insurance
Yeah.
policies that we cashed in. So to say we got along, yes, we got along. We were never.
Kids didn't go hungry, and you had shoes on your feet to go to
Yeah.
school.
But we knew good times and we knew bad times. That's what it amounted to. We had no bed of roses. We're actually right now we're living better than we ever did before.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
You know, when I grew up, I always assumed that we were middle class. I just thought we were the average American family.
Yeah, we put up a good front.
I remember stocking up once in a while if there was a potential layoff coming or
Yeah.
if there was a threat of a strike coming. Strikes used to be a lot more prevalent than they are now. And
Well, your dad cut wood to put in the furnace, you know.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Filled the backyard with wood. As I recall, that was the time when all the trees were being cut in the city because of the Dutch elm disease.
Yeah.
And Dad, you were bribing, what was his name, Wimpy? The guy on the truck? The city truck, you were bribing him with homemade wine to bring the logs over and dump them in our driveway rather than take them to wherever they were taken. And,
Yeah.
wasn't much of a bribe because it was, there wasn't much need of a bribe because all they were doing was get rid of them anyway. Weren't they
Yeah,
taking
we
them
had
to
a-
Sealy or someplace?
We had a terrible storm there one year. And well, traffic was practically paralyzed in Bay City.
Yeah.
With the downed trees, and the city crews and Consumers Power and Bell Telephone, all those people came in, and as they cleared the roads, that's all they did. They just shoved cut the trees into sizes that they could handle and moved them off the road and left them there for until later on, after they got all the roads cleared and the wires up, then the city would do a little in each ward every week and start removing trees. Well, that's when I knew some of the men on the city crew because I had worked there for 2 years. So I was able then to get some wood out of it. And Neil Mahar, one of our neighbors, was also commissioner for part of that time. And he saw to it that it was known that Jim Rich was to get all the wood that he could handle.
Well, I remember days when the driveway from the sidewalk to the garage was full of logs.
Yeah.
Really, and we cut it all up. We didn't have a chainsaw. We
No.
used a two-man
Just a-
cross-cut
right.
saw. Stayed in shape that summer.
But all the kids in the neighborhood liked it. They could come over and
Well, you know,
make a whack at the saw.
one of the great talents that Dad had was getting all the neighborhood kids. I remember reading Tom Sawyer and how Tom Sawyer had gotten all the kids. His job was for that day was to paint Aunt Polly's, to whitewash Aunt Polly's fence. It's a famous, in American literature, it's a famous story. And he convinced all his friends that it was a great privilege to get a chance to whitewash this fence. And they not only did it for him, they paid him for the privilege. And Dad reminds me of Tom Sawyer in a way because all the neighborhood kids would come over, and they would have, if they had the money, paid him to cut wood and to split the logs and to break the bark up. Remember, we stacked the bark up and used it for kindling and all that kind of stuff. And there were constantly kids in our yard doing stuff. And if they weren't chopping wood, they were painting the garage or changing storm windows. Or
Yeah, they were good workers, those kids. They worked cheap too.
yeah.
Well, the two oldest Wackerly kids were about new kids' ages then. They lived just 2 doors down, you know.
And Neil was, of course, a prosecuting attorney, an assistant prosecuting attorney for a long time. Neil Wackerly was. And now he's with a firm, and that firm is the city's attorney, City by City's attorney.
So then,
Little did you know at the time that you were dealing with greatness and
Yeah.
future greatness.
Then kids started graduating, and I think that was our next phase. And Jim was the first to leave home. He went to Marquette University in Milwaukee. Gradually, all the kids got shots at college. You didn't all finish, but you all did start.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All of you had at least one year, but several finished. Jim, he got his master's, and she finished.
Yeah, but she just went a year to college, and then she
Well,
got her.
She just finished here recently. She got her degree
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
last year.
but she did finish, even though she was a mother of 3 by then.
So it took her 20 years.
Yeah, in fact, she went to school with her daughters. Then you had how many different colleges?
Oh God, I don't know. I traveled around a lot.
Aquinas and
Yeah. Aquinas. I went to college out in California when I was in the Marines for a little bit, and
yeah, you went
Delta.
into Marines.
Oakland University, and back to Delta again.
Then Joe, he took a year at Delta in the auto mechanics. I think he got his associate in that.
Yeah,
didn't
he finally, I think he did, yeah.
But that's all he wanted, just that year. He didn't want any more. Mike, he went on to get his bachelor's, and he got a master too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris, he got his bachelor's. So, yep, professionally now, Jim's an engineer at Ford in Detroit. Ann is, forget her title.
She's in budget and cost. She manages budget and cost at the Bay Medical.
Manager of that department. And you are sergeant on the
Bay City
Bay
Police
City
Force.
Police Force.
Joey, he's got a title at work. He works for the
For union
General Motors.
representative in outsourcing
yeah.
issues. As well, well, he's
So we're
working there,
We're proud of all of you. You've all
Well, Mike's doing well. at
And Mike is,
the hospital.
yeah.
what's the name of that?
Well, he's
He's been to about 4 hospitals.
Yeah,
Every time.
it's Butterworth in Grand Rapids.
Butterworth.
Yeah, right now.
It's a holding company for hospitals.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing budgeting there too, as well as Ann in her place. And then Chris is on the Ann Arbor Police Force. So all of you have been working, ever since you started. None of you kids have really been laid off for any period of time. I think Joe was the only one. He probably only had 2 weeks layoff.
Yeah, and he probably enjoyed that.
Oh yes,
Oh yeah, because he was.
he knew he was being called back.
They were making 95% of their wages.
Yeah, he was getting paid to sit home. I want to regress just for a minute, and I promise you I won't drag you back through everything we've already covered, but I just want to go back for a few minutes to the time when you were still in high school or just starting high school. And there were 7 kids in your family, Dan. Right? You were 14 when your dad died, and that was in 1929, wasn't that?
No.
30, I believe.
Well, about that time.
Yeah.
29, 30. It was about.
29. Yeah, yeah.
It was contemporaneous with the big crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Great Depression had just started. So here you were, 14 years old, with 6 brothers and sisters. Your mother was a part-time seamstress.
Mm-hmm.
There's no safety net like we have today, and it must have seemed to you like the whole world was coming apart.
Oh, it was tight, damn tight.
Yeah.
Now, the question I have is, was the Great Depression all that we hear it was, or was it worse than that even, or was it not as bad?
Oh, it
It was bad. Yeah.
bad. See, one of the common sights in Bay City, I imagine every city, was people pulling wagons, going down to get their monthly food allowance. People were out of work, and the government had surplus, and they were passing it out to families, and they'd walk from way in the south end all the way down to First and Water Street, the old knitting
Right.
mills, World Star Knitting Mills building, where they passed out the food. And well, there was a welfare system too, but also at the time there was the WPA, Works Progress Administration. They did public works, paving streets with brick. It was one of the projects. Another was these big, very big sewer projects, and that was all manual labor. Some of those sewers, as they got closer to the river, were so deep that they'd have a man in the bottom shoveling. He'd throw it up on a platform halfway up, and that man in turn would shovel and throw it up to the top of the ditch, and there was a man up there who would throw it further back away so that it wouldn't fall back into the ditch. But we didn't have equipment on those jobs. Other men were raking leaves and working in the parks. The emphasis was not so much on handouts as to try to give the man the dignity of earning a wage to support himself and family. He didn't make enough really on those jobs to support a large family. He had to get the supplemental food, which was very, very helpful. Now,
How did your family
fare? Yeah, I was the one that used to go down to get the food, but also they had at that time what they called a widow's pension. It was a dole. It was a handout relief work, and my mother got $15 a week. Now for that she had to go to the orphans home on the site of Tron's funeral home. That was an orphanage, but also the woman who ran the widow's pension. Well, she ran all the county services, family services. Oh, she was a bitch too with these women.
They usually were.
They had to come in every week, and they'd sit in the waiting room while was her name Olson or anyway, and she'd interview those women, want to know how they spent the $15 they got the previous week, and how much money they had made, or how much help they got from relatives. And in my case, how much money did I make? Because I had two routes. I had a morning Free Press route and an afternoon Detroit News and Times route, as well as a Sunday paper route. And if one of us, if I got a suit of clothing, or particularly, I remember the one time, the first brand new suit I ever got was for graduation, and it cost $22.50. The
Of course, that was an enormous amount of money.
oh well,
for clothes
yeah,
back then.
it was. It sure was, because well, I was just working peddling papers, and in the summertime too. One or two summers, I took care of the janitor work for St. James Parish, because times were tough and the janitor was laid off in the summer. Most of his work in the summer would have been cutting grass, ringing the church bells, and renovating the school desks. They were varnished every year, which I used to do. And any odd jobs that the sisters had in the convent that had to be done. And my mother got the job of cleaning the church every Saturday morning, and that paid $3 to clean the whole church. Now that meant we had a scrubber, which I used to handle for the aisles, but there was no carpeting then. It was just tile or wood or linoleum on the center aisles and across the front and the side aisles. But all that had to be scrubbed. We swept under the pews and dusted all the pews. The whole family worked at that.
So your day-to-day life was just a matter of finding whatever work you could find that paid a buck, and even when you were 14 years old, and now and there's 6 more behind you, down to what was Tommy then? How old was Tommy?
Tommy was only 2 when his dad died, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was very, very young.
So the kids all had to take care of the younger ones. The older kids had to take care of the younger ones.
There was something else in there see, then when I got in high school, I wanted to go out for football, and came the problem of what about the route in the afternoon. Well, Virginia took that over.
Virginia?
Yeah. That was a route that covered everything from Center Avenue all the way to the city limits.